There are 129 active volcanoes in Indonesia, the world's largest archipelago nation. The country sits on an arc of volcanoes and oceanic trenches. Back in the early 80s, a large eruption on the most populous island of Java released a huge volcanic cloud, unseen and undetected by high-flying aircraft, and so a major hazard. Not everyone has the chance to fly somewhere in an aeroplane. For those who do, it's usually a pleasant experience. They say getting there is half the fun. On long journeys in a plane, the meals are usually good, there are in-flight movies, and if you're lucky, you might meet some interesting people. Fortunately, aircraft accidents are few and far between. Imagine what it is like to be faced with the prospect of not completing your journey, of being lost in some unknown place, not saying goodbye to those nearest to you. Some years ago, I spoke with Bill Morris, a resident of the United Kingdom. Bill was on his way to Australia in a large jet, and when it was flying over Indonesia, some rather nasty problems developed. British Airways Flight 9, a Boeing 747 Jumbo, the City of Edinburgh, en route from Kuala Lumpur to Perth, altitude 35,000 feet. 9:30 p.m. Western Australian Standard Time, 239 passengers on board. As the passengers are getting ready to watch the movie on Golden Pond, there's a slight thud as the aircraft flies into a vast, thick volcanic cloud. All 4 engines lose power as they choke with volcanic ash. The captain decides to put his jet into a high-speed, powerless descent in order to restart the engines. Both the captain and crew have done it all before on a simulator, and they go about their duties without any panic. The cabin crew immediately start their emergency procedures, making sure all passengers have their oxygen masks on and are strapped in. They have to struggle along the aisles of the massive jet. They do their job efficiently and with perfect calm, despite the fact that death could only be a matter of minutes away. The pilot informs his passengers of the trouble.
This is your captain speaking. We have a small problem. All our engines have stopped. We're doing our damnedest to get them working again. I trust you're not in too much distress.
One of the passengers is Bill Morris of Eccles. It's his 21st birthday. A birthday he'll never forget as long as he lives.
Well, the stewards and stewardesses had just cleared away our meal things, and we were just settling back to watch the in-flight movie, which is going to be on Golden Pond, I think. And I heard a dull thud, which seemed to come from outside the fuselage, and then gradually the atmosphere within the cabin got smokier and smokier. At first I thought it was cigarette smoke, and then it got much thicker, and my reading light was sort of diffusing down through it like a cinema beam. And I began to go rather numb and rather panicky at the thought of what was going on.
Could you notice that the engines had stopped at this time?
No, I didn't notice that at the time. It was all happened in about 30 seconds later. The plane started bucketing around all over the place. The oxygen masks fell from the ceiling. There were a few screams. The nose dropped, and you had that horrible feeling like when you go down very fast in a lift. It was very frightening by the tension on people's faces. There was no physical panic, but there was quite a lot of screaming.
How long before the captain made his now famous announcement about the engines failing?
I should think it was about 5 or 6 minutes into the actual dive. Obviously, his mind was contained with other things at the time, like keeping the plane in the air, probably. It wasn't for quite a while. We were kept in the dark. No one knew what was going on. The stewards and stewardesses, obviously just as ignorant as ourselves about the situation. The plane was obviously going down at a terrific rate. There was a lot of vibration noise, a lot of turbulence, and you could easily tell that we were losing altitude very quickly.
What were the thoughts going through your mind? Did you think that that was it for you?
Yes, I did. I thought I was going to die. I actually quickly grabbed a piece of paper from my flight bag and wrote a message to my parents and my girlfriend, sort of saying my final farewell. I also grabbed my passport, which is attached to a money belt, and strapped it to my waist, thinking that they might identify my body later. It sounds dramatic on retrospect, but at the time I really thought I was going to die.
What about the passengers close to you?
There was a woman next to me, an old lady, Australian woman. She kept repeating to herself over and over again that she didn't want to land in the sea because she couldn't swim. She was very, very frightened. I held her hand and smiled at her and made a sort of joke with the oxygen mask by placing one over my mouth and one over my ear and pretending it was a telephone. She smiled a little, but we were really, really petrified.
Was it anything like the airport movies where we see a lot of panic among the passengers?
No, it wasn't. The airport movies, they seem so tame. There was one on the television not so long ago, and it seemed so tame compared to what we all went through. It happens much faster. Tension is on a very high key. There's no conversation. We were petrified. You become numb, sort of paralysed, because your destiny is in the hands of someone else. You can't control it at all.
It's said that when anybody's in such a situation as you were, that their past life flashes in front of them very quickly. Did that happen to you?
No, it didn't, but other things did preoccupy my mind. I was thinking of how my parents would take the news of my death. It's impossible to gauge the reaction of someone hearing about your death, actually. I thought of how my friends would take the news of my death. It sounds very dramatic on retrospect, actually, but at the time, these are the things that go through your mind. I also was preoccupied for a little while about how painful it was going to be when we actually hit something. But I tried to get that out of my mind as far as possible because it began to worry me somewhat.
How did the crew behave?
The crew, obviously, in not knowing what was going on, kept to strict procedures. They were excellent, fantastic. A lot of old people looked like they were going to have strokes or heart attacks. The crew were being kind to them, smiling at them, reassuring them as best as possible, because although the crew were obviously very, very scared themselves, they did keep an air of professionalism and kept to the strict safety procedures. They were very good.
It must have been very hard for the crew to move around with an aircraft in a very steep dive.
Yes, Steve, it was. The plane was about 40 degrees, I should think, off lateral, so it was going down pretty quickly, and the crew were having to use the backs of seats to climb up the aisles to quite a great extent because they had oxygen bottles strapped to their backs with extra oxygen for the passengers who looked like they needed it. A lot of women with small children and babies were very, very panicky. They needed the extra oxygen, I think, to calm them down.
Was there any other form of reaction among the passengers who were obviously distressed?
People seemed to get religious all of a sudden. There was quite a lot of religious talk bandying about, especially from some of the older members of the passenger crew. People were sort of saying Jesus and oh my God, and the silent prayers were being said obviously all around me. But there was a general clamour that tended to kill all conversation or any attempts at conversation. The noise of the aircraft was quite severe at one time with sort of the screaming wind, and it seemed like it was going to break up, rocking all over the sky, and a horrible feeling.
Well, how did this jumbo jet come to be in a volcanic cloud in the first place?
Well, there hadn't been any volcanic activity in that area for several years, I'm led to believe, and this volcano had erupted 90 minutes before our incident. And volcanic ash evidently is transparent on radar. It's totally invisible on radar. It looks just like a normal cloud. And so as it was at night and our plane was travelling at 500 miles an hour, the pilots just assumed that this sort of cloud in the distance was just a normal cloud made up of water droplets rather than volcanic ash. So he had no idea he was hitting a solid wall.
No, you were cruising at around 35,000 feet, is that right?
That's right, thereabouts,
and
yes.
The engines didn't restart until 12,000?
12,000, 11,500 feet, yes. That's where we levelled out. Yes, that's right.
And it took 12 minutes to go down?
12 minutes. Yes, it seemed an eternity at the time. When you don't know what's happening because it was at night, all we could see were the flames pouring out of the engines, the general smoky atmosphere. We knew something was desperately wrong, but the time seemed an eternity, it really did.
You saw flames coming out of the engines. Can you tell us exactly what they were like?
Yes, the first sign of flames was I heard a loud scream from behind me. I looked over the back of my seat, and a woman by a window had just noticed these orange-red flames pouring past the window. She slammed the blind shut, as did all the window passengers, because I don't think in that situation you really want to look at how you're breaking up, as it were.
Where were you sitting?
I was sitting in the centre aisle, but in an aisle seat, so I wasn't too far from a window, and I could see what was going on outside. But as I said, as soon as the flames started coming out of the engines, people slammed their blinds shut, not wanting to see what was going on.
Could you hear the engines being restarted?
Yes, you could definitely hear engine noise, although we couldn't hear them being restarted. In the heat of the situation, I think your senses are numbed and your reactions tend to become much slower. Everything seemed like it was happening in slow motion. So we didn't realise the engines had started until we'd levelled out, I don't think. Your senses returned to some kind of normality, and you realised that you could be in with a chance of making it. And obviously spirits rose noticeably when we levelled out.